All right. Hey, Bradley, to follow up again on my question regarding my client offering 50K a year per city, since two of the cities he'd like to get into have a population of 260 and 200K, while the other two cities have a population of 1.3 and 1 million. I wonder if 50K would make sense because I presume it'd be much harder to rank GBP listings and generate leads in the cities with over 1 million. Exactly. Yeah. And I think I already answered that. In this case, would you say you'd still try to create listings and rank them in the big cities, but maybe charge higher? Or would you say you'd rather turn down setting up listings in big cities? And if you were to create and rank GBP listings in big cities, do you think it's a good idea to set up multiple listings to target smaller areas in the big city rather than to set up listings and try to rank it across the big city? Yes. So to answer your question there, yes, absolutely. In large cities, because guys, the way that if you're talking about Google business assets get like the coverage, the maps coverage area, the proximity, the area in which the map will get coverage in search. It becomes narrower with the more densely populated areas, right? The more densely populated the area, the narrower the coverage is. And that is because of two reasons. Number one, it's more densely populated. So therefore it's by nature, it's likely more competitive. There's more competing companies offering the same products and services. And the way that Google works now is Google tries to, it's hyper local. Google's gone hyper local. Google wants to, if it knows that the search query has local intent, whether it's explicit or implied local intent. If Google it thinks that the search query has local intent, it is going to return hyper localized results. And therefore, if it's a densely populated area, it's likely that there are multiple more competing companies that provide products, those products and services that the searcher is looking for. And Google is going to want to return results that are in close, so maps results or Google business profiles that are in close proximity to the searcher from the point where they are searching. Hopefully that's clear. So in large cities, it makes sense to have multiple GBPs, throughout the boroughs or districts or whatever quadrants. You could even split a city up into quadrants, right? And you have one in the north, south, east, and west, so to speak. That's a way to do it. But I don't know if you might have an in somehow of getting GBPs. That's very difficult to do. So if you're talking about organic assets, then it doesn't, in my opinion, you can go with just one kind of asset or a series of assets because you're not talking about Google Maps rankings. Organic is a whole different animal, right? Maps rankings is one thing. Proximity is a huge factor, but organic is not the case. So it really depends on what you're trying to do. As far as, if it's a big city, yes, I recommend if you're talking about Google business profiles, you have multiple profiles. Split them out. Like I said, do quadrants or whatever. And that's a good way to do it. And that's how I recommend it. Because again, that's the other thing, guys. It's funny because I have a link building client. One of my best link building clients actually earlier sent me a request yesterday about expanding his search grid, local, because we provide bright local reports for my link building clients. We do organic rank tracking, local search grid tracking, and citation tracking. And our reports, our local search grid reports, our kind of normal settings are half-mile spacing, a 15 by 15 grid with half-mile spacing for most Google business profiles. In very densely populated areas like New York City, Philadelphia, Miami, etc., we oftentimes will reduce the spacing between nodes in the search grid report to 0.1 miles. Why? Because of what I just mentioned. Again, especially for storefront businesses, for service area businesses, we typically leave it at 0.5 mile radius or spacing between nodes. But because, my client asked me about having his local search grid, which was a 15 by 15 grid at 0.5 mile spacing. It was for one of his clients. He sent me a support ticket asking if we could increase the maps, the maps area, so the spacing between nodes, to cover, like, I think he said like a 30 or 40 mile radius. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. And I sent him a video and I was like, we can do that, but I don't know why you'd want to. That's not how local Google Maps works. Like Google business profiles, if we do that, you're only going to see one speck of green in the very center, and that's it. The rest is going to be a sea of red. Why would we do that? And he said, well, because my client wants to, covers a large service area, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, I understand that, but you can track that stuff in organic, but not in maps. It's just going to make the search grid reports look like you're not ranking at all, when indeed they could be crushing it in their local area. And so I said to him, look, if you want me to, I'll demonstrate this for you. Tell me which location it is, because he's got multiple locations with me. And I said, and I'll do it. And so he sent it back to me and or sent me the name of the location. And I went in and again, the report setting was a 15 by 15 grid with half mile spacing. So then I redid it at 1 mile spacing. And then I redid it again today. I did this twice today to 2 mile spacing. And it's really interesting, but the low competition keywords that didn't have that has very, very little competition. And I even went in because I recorded a video to demonstrate, to explain to him what I was seeing. And I took the same set of keywords that were in the local search grid report and went to the Google Business, excuse me, the Google Ads Keyword Planner, and I plugged those in there to show the search volume. And I set the geographic area to the what they call the Nielsen DMA region. So, and this was in the Washington D.C. area, so it's the Washington Nielsen whatever they call that Nielsen area. It's a big region. So essentially, it's Southern Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Anyway, long story short, I just set the geographic area to that, and it showed that the top level keyword had 880 searches per month on average for that region, but the keywords that were much lower competition had like 70 or 60 or 70 searches per month. So there was a magnitude of 10 difference, right, between the top the competitive keywords, the ones that generate the most leads, and the non-competitive keywords. There was a huge difference in search volume. And I could clearly demonstrate that, which I did, and I recorded a video to show it to him. And I clearly demonstrated that in the video where I was showing the mapped grids, because there was this, I believe there was maybe 11 keywords. There was, or maybe it was 7. Sorry, there were 7 keywords that we were tracking in the local search grid report. And I showed him, I was like, look, this keyword, the competitive keyword, as we expand the map area, it shows the rankings are tanking, and that is because it's showing an average of the nodes, like where it is ranking across all those points on the map. So 15 by 15 is 225 points. So the average was going down considerably as we expanded the area for the competitive keywords. But what I thought was really interesting was the non-competitive keywords that only had 70 that also don't get much search volume. He was ranking, even when I spread it to 2 mile radius, which is a 450 square mile area, a 15 by 15 grid with 2 mile spacing between nodes is 450 square miles. That's freaking huge. That's 15 miles in any direction from the center point. If you think about that, that's huge. That's a huge area. And yet he was still ranking straight up greens across that whole area because it's not competitive. So why did I say all of that? Because very specifically, it goes to show you that competitive terms, the more competitive it is, the less coverage area you're going to get. The less competitive it is, the more coverage area you're going to get. So all of that comes back to, once again, if I was going to be targeting with this type of an arrangement, I would want to go after these types of cities, the 200 and 260, the 200 to 500K type cities, not the million plus. If I'm going to go after the million plus, first of all, I'd want a bigger budget, or I'd want multiple locations. But again, that's going to require a bigger budget. And honestly, it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer to get traction in those longer areas. So I prefer to do less work and start generating revenue than do more work before I start generating revenue. So I would go after the smaller cities first. I would absolutely target the larger cities, but I would require more budget, etc. But anyway, all I'm trying to say, guys, is it's really interesting. But if you do some tests like what I just talked about, you'll see that's. But who want the long tail keywords that have very little search volume, they're still valuable. So it does make sense to optimize for those and to get that huge map area coverage, which I thought was incredibly interesting, because even those lower search volume keywords, I would have thought there would have been more competitors trying to rank for that. And apparently they're not. And he's crushing it for most of his keywords. And I mean, by the way, he's crushing it for the top level keyword too. It's just a much, much smaller area that the GBP is ranking for that. So anyway, that's why I'm saying, guys, like the more competitive it is, it makes sense. If there's more competing companies providing products and services in that local area, then Google's going to want to return results of businesses that are in close proximity to the searcher. So it's going to be a smaller area for that. But if there's not a lot of competitors, then you can get much, much larger coverage area. So anyway, like I said, I would target the smaller areas. That's what I'm teaching, by the way, at the DHA program, is really about identifying those areas that have little competition and building organic assets so that you can rank very quickly. Yes, they're not going to generate a lot of leads, but that's okay. You can use those assets that you rank in the low competition areas as conversation starters to prove to the business owners in your chosen industry and the locations where you have assets ranked, you can use those to show that you know how to get results and start conversations. And then you can rent them those assets or sell them those on a pay per lead basis, the leads that are generated from those assets, or give them away as long as, and say, look, we'll throw in the leads generated from these assets if you sign up for an SEO plan for your brand, if that makes sense. You could just use those organic assets that you rank in low competition areas as a value add-on, so to speak, if they sign up for SEO services for their brand. So there's just a number of things that I'm teaching in the DHA program about using organic assets and identifying low competition areas to sell SEO services to local clients, right? And that's kind of a hybrid of what you're talking about here. So hence the name Directory Hybrid Agency. Anyway. Okay. Or would you say I'm better off just running Google Ads to generate leads in the big cities? Yeah, I mean, that's always an option too. But what I found is it's hard to, selling leads, it's hard to make leads profitable with Google Ads. At least I found it difficult. If you're running Google Ads for a client, it's a little bit different, but I found it difficult to monetize leads generated from just Google Ads unless I'm selling a lead multiple times, which is an option. So anyway.